Was there any sense of disappointment after you broke your tailbone? Was there like, oh, if only this didn't happen, like I would have continued. Was there any of that kind of sensation that came up for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was depressed. I was second guessing my decisions, and it took me a while to get over it. Apart from like the physical healing, it took me a while to get back into that state mentally where I'm like, okay, let's focus into training, onto the next competition, the next training phase, whatever it was.
How did you originally get into rowing?
So my journey in sports wasn't something I ever anticipated. I had just finished my degree, moved back to Saudi and was looking for a job. I was at my uncle's house and his friend was passing by chance, and he was the newly appointed president of the skiing federation. So we were having like a light conversation. He was asking what my background was, if I knew how to ski, and he said that they're trying to set up a national team to go out and train to hopefully make the Beijing Winter Olympics. I'm like, and you're just speaking to me? Like, what what could you want from me? And he's like, yeah, if you know how to ski, would be interested. He gave me his card, and I didn't think twice about it. I'm like, is this guy insane? I was barely training at the time. I wasn't serious about sports, and my knowledge of that field was very limited. A month or two passed by, and he asked someone from his team reach out again. They bring up the topic again. They're like, we already had a conversation with the president. Would you like to join the team? I'm like, maybe I should give this some more thought. And I told him I'd get back to him. So the next time I saw my uncle, I told them that based off of our conversation last time, they ended up reaching out. Should I do it or not? He's like, yeah, definitely. And I don't know why cross-country skiing popped up in my head. I had done it once before in high school, and I remembered really liking it. But of course, it was nothing to the level that I was getting myself into. So I ended up calling the guy back, telling him that I was interested. And he said, well, you're pretty much the only person that wants to do cross-country skiing. Do you want anyone else to join you? And I instantly thought of Brakan, Ali Rida, my cousin. At the time, we weren't close, but growing up, we'd spend a lot of time together, but we sort of drifted apart later in life. And I called him up. I had this whole speech ready for him. I'm like, listen, dude, we're gonna go to Sweden, we're gonna train, we're gonna make the Olympics. And I couldn't even get through the first half a minute. And he's like, yeah, I'm in, let's go. So that was a great experience.
You're both ready for it. You're just like, I want something new, probably. Like, let's try it. Why not?
Yeah, and when I ended up speaking to him about it later, and he was like, yeah, I was unhappy at my job. I wanted to quit, and your call came at just the right time. So I quit his job, and we both left for Sweden.
What does it feel like when you need to make that move? Obviously, there's an excitement, right? But then there's obviously fear as well, because you've never tried this before. So what is going through your head as you're going through this transitional phase?
No, honestly, it was insane. What we were doing was insane. I barely knew him, even though he was my cousin. We were going to go live in another country for 6 months with a trainer we don't know, in a country we've never been to, doing a sport we've basically never done before. But the first 3 months were pretty hard. Our trainer's philosophy was you have to train in order to train. So you have to have some baseline level of fitness to be able to do real proper training for competing in sports. So that's what we did for 3 months, 3 times a day, just getting our fitness up to the level where he thought it was good enough to be able to start doing like race circuits and training outdoors, training with other professional athletes.
And what does it feel like when you're then amongst all these other professional athletes? Because I'm sure everybody gets imposter syndrome to some extent, right? But the way I view imposter syndrome is more specific towards, I guess, like you starting, it's like a new beginning, right? Anything that you start, you're technically an imposter in because you're just newly trying it. So what does it feel like when you're now amongst all of these already professional athletes who have been in it for a while?
I definitely still have imposter syndrome. Um, I mean, I don't think that feeling's ever going to go away unless you're at the very top of your sport, because you're constantly trying to improve and prove yourself. But, and especially for us, I mean, the entire team has a pretty similar experience to me where other international athletes have been at it for at least 5 years, some of them 10, 15 years. And their path to being an international athlete had steps along the way where they, like, for example, competed at the junior level, then school level, then university, under 23s, and then the senior level. We were expected to just go to the senior level and perform. So I feel like that amplifies the imposter syndrome even more, but we try and have fun as much as we can.
Well, as you're dealing with imposter syndrome, you say you still feel it. How do you come at it? How do you calm down that feeling?
It's not like it ever goes away. You just have to acknowledge it and sit on top of it. Because if you let it take control of your emotions and your actions, it's just gonna eat you up. You're not gonna be able to train or perform or think about anything else.
Yeah, it's just accepting it and then moving through it, I guess. I think that's with everything, right? You just have to accept it for what it is and then you move through it. Because if you just keep resisting it, then it just keeps showing up in different ways. And how did you find rowing?
So when I was, as a part of my rehab, I went to London to get myself back in shape, see a couple doctors. And when I got healthy enough to get back in the gym, I went and had a session with Rakan and Hussein. And at the time, they were training with Bill Barry, Hussein's old legendary coach. And he was trying to pitch the idea to me, and of course I wasn't having it. I'm like, I was scared, I don't want rowing. Why would I move to another sport if it's just gonna hurt more than skiing? So I wasn't very receptive to the idea. And then it sort of grew on me. Rakan kept making making hints, telling me to join, making it more appealing. And I did a few sessions with them, and the rest is history. I just continued with them.
How did you end up breaking your tailbone while you were asleep?
So at the time, I took a turn way too fast and didn't really catch the edges of the skis. So I sort of slipped, but it wasn't, I've had much worse falls. I sort of glided onto my ass and stood up instantly. Rakan saw me and he was like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." We continued skiing down. As soon as we sat down on the ski lift back up, I started feeling this like weird shooting pain on my leg, and I couldn't sit straight on the lift. I'm like, maybe it's just swollen and it's just bruised. So we continued for a few more runs. As soon as I got back to the apartment and my body warmed up, I wish I could show you the picture. I'll try and find it. It looked like I got ass shots. My left butt cheek was 3 times the size of my right one, and I couldn't move for days. Nobody knew what was wrong until I ended up getting an X-ray, getting it checked, and they found that it's broken.
That's wild. And it's so crazy to me because I always think about these injuries. Like sometimes you don't even feel them. Like they just creep up on you. They happen and they're painful as F, and then you just, after like maybe an hour or two, then that's when it hits you. And it's like amazing what the mind can do. The mind just tricks you into like dealing with the pain in the moment. And then once you're relaxed, it's like, oh, hello, here I am.
And also another the worst part wasn't the broken bone. I also pinched the nerve, that the sciatic nerve running down your leg. So for months, I couldn't bend my leg, so I couldn't sit down. Whenever I'd sit down, I'd have to fully extend my leg and sit like this. So where I broke my tailbone, it was like 3 hours from Stockholm. And I obviously couldn't get on a plane. I couldn't get on a train. I could barely sit in a car. So we had to drive to Stockholm. And the entire way, I was hanging off the handrail with my leg extended in the car, the seat fully reclined, basically holding myself up for 3 hours while the can got us there. So yeah, that was one of the worst experiences in my...
Probably one of the worst experiences, but now you can look back at it and laugh and enjoy the experience.
Yeah, cool.
But when that's all happening and you're going through the panic of it all, how are you coping mentally? Like, what are you telling yourself in these in-between moments? Because I can guarantee that if I was in that position, I know that I would be scared and I would be thinking, oh, my life is ruined. And as you mentioned, you did feel like, how am I going to ever get back to skiing? So how are you mentally moving yourself through it to overcome it?
While I was injured, I wasn't really thinking too much about it. Obviously, I was pissed off because I'd put in so much work. I'd lost all the fitness gains I had made, and getting back into it was going to be so hard, and it was. But you sort of just have to take it day by day, make small goals, get the small wins whenever you can. Because at that point, when you think big picture, where you were, where you are now, thinking about a situation you can't really do much about, it doesn't really help.
What are you doing in terms of the visualization?
So what I try to do is visualize each stroke in a 2K race, which is a standard distance that we do. Literally just think about your warm-up, how you're going to get in the boats, how you're going to get to the start line, how you're going to take the first few strokes, settling to your race pace. Like literally just in that 6 or 7 minute race, try to think of each and every movement. And it takes quite a long time.
Yeah, a lot of athletes use visualization because of, obviously, when you think about it in terms of neuroscience, it's like you're mentally preparing and rehearsing the moves so it can become easier both physically and mentally. When you are doing it, it decreases your stress levels. It makes your muscles get prepared to take the action. And is that why you're doing it as well?
Yeah, definitely. It sort of prepares your body to what's to come, but it's so boring. It's really tedious, and it's honestly really hard just to sit there and think for that long about something so specific. But yeah, it does help a lot.
When the doubt and fear comes in, when you're in the race, when you're training, how do you move through that? How do you handle it?
I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in a race. The wind can mess you up a lot. If it's choppy, it's really hard to row. I think the biggest thing for me to learn was focus on your own race. Because when I first started, I'd look too much to my left, to my right. Where's the competition? What are they doing? And I'd make a lot of mistakes because of that. So the biggest thing is just staying in your lane, focusing on your race, and executing the race plan.
And I'm sure as an athlete, of course, trying to go into the Olympics, there's a lot of pressure on you to represent the country, to make wins for your coaches. And when you are in the midst of all of that and handling the pressure, how do you take care of yourself? What are you doing to make sure that you, Talal, you're okay through all the pressure?
I was actually thinking about that today because we're supposed to compete in the Asian Cup at the end of April. And usually my experience has been, at least with rowing, where we've been doing it for a very short amount of time compared to the other nations. So in the lead up to some competitions, there's very high expectations put on us. It's like you have to make top 6, or you have to podium, or you have to, at least, if there's a lot of entries, make the top 10 or top 8. But you sort of have to take a step back, make, sort of see realistically where you're at, and set the expectations based off of that, because you don't want to be setting yourself for disappointment in every race that you go to. But we've slowly been improving. We're getting better results race by race. So you just have to, I know it sounds cliche, but trust the process. And it takes time at the end of the day. I mean, it's just about repetition, about putting in the work for years, day in, day out.
I'm sure you do feel the reward though, like regardless of whatever you achieve during a race or whatever you're achieving during your trainings, because obviously there's some times you want to hit, right? There's some markers that you're trying to increase. But regardless, do you still feel a reward even when you don't hit those markers?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big part of that is knowing that you tried your best. And I feel like a lot of people in sports and in life in general aren't satisfied because they have regrets that they didn't give it their all. But thankfully, in most of the competitions that I've done, I've just given it my best. Sometimes it's not good enough, but you just have to trust it. Eventually, it'll start working.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, I would say that it's always going to be good enough, in the sense of you're always doing the best you can in each given moment, right? Like whatever you're dealing with mentally, physically, emotionally on that day, in that race, you're always putting in whatever effort that you can give in that moment. So it's always going to be good enough. That's just a little turnaround for you. But how do you celebrate in each and every given moment? How do you celebrate the losses? How do you celebrate the wins?
In that aspect, I feel like especially the world of sports is very cutthroat. You can't really be too stuck on a win or a loss. Win or lose, you have to treat it the same. What you can take away from it, where you did bad, where you did good, and how you can move forward. So there's been instances where, yeah, you set a PB or you break a record in training or in competition. You can't be too caught up in the moment. Yeah, you should take a minute to appreciate what you've done, but everyone else around you is trying to achieve the same thing. So if you slack off, you sort of fall behind the pack. So you just have to constantly just keep at it.
And is that motivating or demotivating?
Both. Yeah, definitely both. Because you don't get to celebrate for as long as you want, but it definitely pushes you to be better, which is a big plus.
I want to know more about how you train in terms of what you eat, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis when you are waking up early in the morning, going out into the water. What are you doing on a mental level? What are you doing on a physical level? How are you nourishing yourself?
So on a normal day of training here, it's not including Ramadan, I'd wake up at around 4:30. I'd get a small-ish breakfast in. I've been sort of playing around with nutrition. I used to have a ton of carbs in the morning, but I found out that it just spikes my insulin and I'd just be tired the entire day. So I do just protein and fats for breakfast. I drive up to Dirra. This session starts at either 6 or 6:30. 6 in the summers, 6:30 in the winters, because the sun rises later. Finish, come back home, something to eat, another cardio session, come back home, eat something else, and go back for either a third cardio session or a gym session. And on days like that, I'm in bed by 8:30, 9 max.
And how has your mental health been like as you're moving through training right now?
Oh, I'm a mess. I'm joking. It's definitely now, especially, is the time to sort of lock in and really focus on what you need to do and make the most out of every session. because leading up to a competition, you have no time to waste.
As I mentioned earlier, is that there's a lot of pressure on you as an athlete. How do you balance the fun part of being an athlete, of rowing, and then the work aspect of it?
Traveling for training or competitions, I mean, we get to go places that I otherwise wouldn't have the chance to visit or even think of visiting. So exploring, getting to see the city, enjoying the lakes that we roll or the rivers that we do, that's a big plus. Enjoying my time with my teammates. I mean, just now today for the morning sessions, the weather was terrible. I mean, the waves were just crashing into the boat. My back was killing me because the headwind was so strong. But you manage to find humor in that with the people that you're rowing with. So it's sort of like we're all suffering together, so it's funny. So little moments like that.
Did you feel like you had to sacrifice any parts of you to take on this role as an athlete?
Oh yeah, the 100%. I think the name of the game is sacrifice. You have to sacrifice a lot. Your downtime, vacations. You have to put in as many hours as a regular job. And yeah, a lot of things that you're used to, you just have to get used to a new way of living, almost.
And does that feel easy for you to do now, more so? Because I think that obviously when you're creating change in your life, there are moments of hesitancy, resistance, because we like to live in the comfort of the way things are. And especially when you're taking on something completely new, completely different, and you're going into skiing, firstly, to start with, and then you're moving into rowing. There's all these big, major changes that are happening. How do you cope with change? And how have you been more accepting of allowing change to be? And how do you handle it when it does come?
I mean, change is definitely a good thing in my opinion. How I handled these different scenarios in my life, I sort of have a philosophy where if you're presented with an opportunity, you should take it and run with it. So even though I wasn't very receptive of sports when it was first presented to me, it was definitely the best thing that has ever happened to me. So learning that along the way of whatever is presented in front of you, even if it's something you're not familiar with, going into the unknown, it's definitely worth it to help you grow as a person, meet new people, and develop new and better habits.
What's interesting about change and going into the unknown is that that can be a really scary place for a lot of people. But to me, the way I view the unknown is that it's actually really exciting. It's like somebody gives you a gift. You're not questioning, oh my God, it's so scary. What's in that box? You take in the box, you open it, you unravel it, and you get really excited. Like, oh, I got a gift. And that's the way, at least I like to look at the unknown, because we can look at it in a scary way, which can make us push change away from us, push the unknown away from us, or we can embrace it and be like, oh, this is opening new doors for me. This is bringing in new opportunities in my life. And I think that's something that I see obviously in you, because you do not just celebrate change, you walk into change with an open heart. And that's how you have, I believe, gotten to where you are right now, because you're allowing yourself to move through it. Do you feel like you have found happiness within rowing?
Yeah, I mean that's actually another thing I learned is don't be focused too much on the end goal or a certain prize you're going after. Try to enjoy the journey, the destination, and the people going along with it with you. I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned.
And how do you find the faith when you are in the midst of it all? What do you look on? What do you take on spiritually? What is your faith like with everything that you do?
So I think at the core of it, you have to really believe in yourself. And that also sounds very cliche, but that's sort of the base of anything you do, especially in sports. If you don't believe you can do it, if you don't believe you can win, if you have that slightest doubt in your mind, it's going to eat you up and just kill you down the line. So I think just believing in yourself is the biggest thing.
How have you built that belief in yourself?
I don't think I have fully. I mean, there's always doubts creeping in and out of my head, but I think it ties into confidence a little bit. The more you do it, the more you're comfortable with it, and the more you believe you can do it.